Welcome back to Reimagine 2020. I'm Yonah Hochhauser, and today I'm glad to be joined by Jack O'Halloran, CEO and co-founder at SKALE Labs. Jack, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, first off, Jack, tell the audience a little bit kind of about who you are and how you got into blockchain.
Yeah, so my name is Jack O'Halloran. I'm the co-founder, CEO of SKALE Labs. We're the company or the creators that helped start the SKALE network, which is an open source, decentralized network that helps scale Ethereum. So I got into the space. It was actually kind of a long, circuitous route. I started in enterprise software. So I was with a mobile security company called Good Technology out of college. So then 2005, using a lot of cutting edge cryptography. So I got introduced to security and crypto back then. It's interesting. Actually, my co-founder, Stan of SKALE Labs, did our cryptography certification because the US government, the US Senate, FBI, White House, all these government entities around the world used Good. So, started there. We had I think a $500 million exit to Motorola. So it was a fun rocket ship to be on. And then I decided, hey, I want to go start my own company. And I got to know the founder of Good really well, who became a mentor, and the CEO, and they helped me kind of get up and running. And I started a company called Incentiline. That was a digital currency platform. This was in 2008. So you could take these dollars inside of a currency, these cryptocurrencies, and pay for resources. And the price of the resource would fluctuate based off supply and demand. So NASA, for example, we were building these NASA bucks. And so you could buy wind tunnel time or supercomputer time, or, get foreign nationals on the base, all these things that, there's limited supply. And so blockchain, this wasn't a blockchain because it didn't need to be, because it was running inside of an entity. But currencies in limited supply are really good at aligning resources. And that was where, kind of my introduction, where I got interested in the space and category. Even, as we know, Bitcoin didn't exist back then. but hey, like a lot of startups, we ended up finding a different path. I ended up building a company called Octana, and almost every biotech and pharma in the world uses this machine learning AI platform to optimize communications and sales and marketing and delivery of healthcare information. So I've been doing tech startups for a long time. I built that company, me and a couple people, to a really big global company, and did that for a long time. But in 2013, I got introduced to Bitcoin. Actually, 2011 got introduced to Bitcoin. But I have to say, didn't truly understand it. And then 2013 kind of went down the rabbit hole. And then when Ethereum launched, got really excited about that. And then when I was starting my next company, I was working out of a place called SaaStr. That's an incubator for SaaS companies, software as a service companies. And I was just spending all day reading about crypto, and trading crypto. And so I was like, you know what? And I realized that there's a new types of businesses to be created that are community owned and community governed, and have tremendous growth potential in so many different areas. And so I couldn't go back. I was just, so that's how I got into blockchain, and happy to tell you more about how, how SKALE came about, but that was my personal journey.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. You did cybersecurity, machine learning, and now blockchain. I mean, you're checking off all the boxes on these companies over here. But yeah, so SKALE Labs is in charge of the SKALE network, of really developing and working on the SKALE network. So tell us a little bit about kind of what the SKALE network is, and what makes it superior to other layer 2 protocol. Yeah.
So, and actually, maybe I'll first start by saying, I worked in mobile in 2005, and mobile no one used smartphones, right? It was very rare to have someone use a smartphone. Maybe you'd see somebody used a BlackBerry or like a Palm Trio, but we didn't have the iPhone. We didn't have this, the Android operating system, and the device speeds were horrible. And I saw a similar thing happen with machine learning and AI, and no one called it machine learning hardly. It was just advanced analytics, and everyone thought it was garbage, and we don't need computers to help us figure things out. And both those industries struggled for a while because the infrastructure wasn't there and the use cases weren't there. And I saw both of them firsthand. I was there early with both of them and was able to ride those peaks. And I see a lot of similar things with blockchain now, and that's why I got interested in it. And what we're lacking is infrastructure. and an optimal user experience. So I was working on starting a dApp, and Stan, my co-founder, was working on starting 6 different dApps. He said, I can do a decentralized Uber, and I'm working on a thing for a Twitter payments platform, and I have a decentralized exchange, and I want to build this. And Stan's brilliant. He's a technical visionary. And I said, Stan, why do you think you can build all 5 of these things? And we got in front of a whiteboard, and he mapped out the architecture. He says, well, here's what I would build. Here's what it would look like. I said, you know what? Like, and our brains came together, and we're like, let's go build Scale. Let's go build. And, we weren't calling it a layer 2 scaling, where it was just like, let's go scale Ethereum. Okay. And so what it is, it's the design around this is well, first let me tell you about side chains. Side chains have a lot of amazing properties with very good user experience, seamless interoperability between the other one blockchain and another blockchain. And if they're running the same base software, like Ethereum, for example, then there's full interoperability and composability as well. Okay. Now the issue is that side chains have a smaller number of computers or nodes that run the blockchain. And then, blockchains are really a human coordination effort. And if 2/3 of the people in a Byzantine fault tolerant blockchain want to steal the money and change the ledger, they can do it. And if you only have 16 people, it's a lot easier to get 16 people to collude than 16,000. And so what Scale does, Scale has a unique model where at the end of the day, a developer gets only 16 nodes. They get a small set of nodes running their blockchain, but those nodes are picked from this really big pool. And so first off, there's, right now there's already 4,000 people that have Scale tokens that are staking them. They'll start staking on October 1st, and over 100 million in value of tokens coming into the network to secure the network, to really give a pooled security in a proof of stake system. And then what happens is then there's validators that run all of these nodes, and there'll be hundreds of nodes in the network, and each of these nodes is broken up into more smaller pieces. And so if I say, hey, I have a decentralized exchange, I have a DeFi application, I have a payments platform, and I want to get a Scale chain, well then actually the Ethereum mainnet talks to Scale, and then without any people being involved, it randomly selects some nodes and it pulls them in. They say, this is your nodes. And that's what makes this an elastic side chain, or I even like to call them elastic shards, because they're more shards than side chains. And these shards then, the operators then are rotated in and out. So instead of getting 2/3 of 16 people to collude, you have to get 2/3 of thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars going into these node operators, and you have to get the node operators, the validators, to collude. And it's really difficult because we're pooling security. So now it's not mathematically guaranteed that you would that's secure. It's guaranteed with blockchain, meaning money and incentives and coordination and cryptography. Yeah. And so that's what Scale does, and that's why I think a lot of people are excited about it, because hey, it's a blockchain still, and I get the power of a side chain with some really kind of fancy Scale tech, but also I get interoperability back to the Ethereum mainnet, and I don't lose security when I pull things over into Scale.
Well, I mean, the name of the company is so apropos right now, because everyone is trying to figure out how to scale on Ethereum, because that's really where DeFi is right now. It's where it's hot, and Ethereum, the network cannot keep up the sky-high gas fees, and it makes it very tough to do simple transactions if you're not, to make them economically viable. But you mentioned that the way that you're able to make it so secure is that even though you're using a low number of nodes on the Scale sidechain, they're randomly selected, or are they randomly selected, or they're chosen randomly selected? From the entire pool of Ethereum nodes?
From the entire pool of Scale nodes. So Scale, you could think of it like you need a brain to run a network, right? Like I'll call it a brain. I'm not using deep technical terms. I'm trying to give some normal speak here to help people understand. So this brain or engine needs to orchestrate what happens. In typical companies, guess what? There's people that work with software that, oh, okay, like we'll send you this resource. In a blockchain, we can't have humans in the loop. The software has to run it. And so the cool thing about Scale is actually, over half of the brain, so to speak, is actually on the Ethereum mainnet in these smart contracts on Ethereum. And I think one of the most sophisticated large sets of smart contracts on the Ethereum mainnet. It took $20,000 of gas just to deploy it.
Wow. Although nowadays that's not saying too much. Nowadays I send my friend and it's $20,000 of gas.
Which, by the way, I'm glad we did this before the spike. It might have been like 100,000 to deploy it.
Yeah.
So it was expensive, but this brain, these smart contracts, they actually speak to every node, and every node has a node core that's like its own brain. And it's like a bee colony, right? It's all these nodes are talking back to, the queen bee, which is Ethereum. And then they're in an autonomous way orchestrating themselves to then, be assigned back to people. And so the pool of nodes is the Scale nodes, and we'll start with hundreds, but someday we hope to have tens of thousands of Scale nodes. And each node could be on 128 different Scale chains. Wow. Meaning, you can get 8,000 chains from about 1,000 nodes.
Wow. And so that's really what an elastic blockchain really means. This ability to kind of change and pick your nodes. Yeah.
So there's two elements that make it elastic. Why we, I guess, selected that term. One is there's elasticity in the structure of how nodes are assigned, which we talked about. The other is sizing. And so configuration is a popular term in the enterprise where, I buy something from Salesforce.com or Amazon or Google Cloud or some big provider, and they don't go customize the software and work and write custom code for me to use it. That used to happen with on-premise software. So if you do research on on-premise compared to software as a service, on-premise is all about custom code. Software as a service is about configuration. And it means, and what I want is off-the-shelf personalization for my needs, my cost, my use cases, the features and functionality that I need to manage my use cases. And so what the elastic piece with Scale is, I could say, hey, we're a 2-person project. We're going to buy a really small chain. I'm going to get 1/128th of 16 nodes. Or like, hey, we're a really big project. We need a ton of throughput. We need a lot of storage. We're going to go buy all, the full set of 16 nodes. And in the future, you might be able to say, I want 1/128th of 128 nodes, or I want everything of 128 nodes. And the cost is configurable to the size. So that's where the elasticity comes in too. And along with, you'll be able to turn on privacy features because SGX is used within the network, and other things that you can personalize. And where we're trying to build is, we're not trying to build today's DeFi environment is awesome. It's fun. We're seeing the early stages of what's going to come. We're trying to build enterprise grade configurable software that is blockchain, that's decentralized, that's autonomous, it's open source, that we're going to need in like 5 years and 2 years and 3 years when we have, real entities and projects competing with, mass centralized finance and mass Web3 and consumer internet. And we'll see people competing with Uber and Twitter and Facebook and Google, and really taking community plays to take out, to get network effects and disrupt. That's what we're building for.
Well, I mean, that's a wonderful vision to have, because you do have to be very forward thinking in this industry where innovation is happening so quickly. It's incredible if you really look at how young the industry is, and at the pace that innovation is happening. It's sometimes hard to keep up. Yam, sushi, urine. I mean, it's especially in the DeFi space, it's really out of control. But right now, for today, are there any dApps currently running on Scale?
Yeah, so we have 57 dApps signed up for the Scale Innovator Program. And what they're doing is they're running and testing on the testnet. So there's a Scale developer testnet, a DevNet up and running. And then what happens is we need to collateralize these chains now and with Scale tokens, because in DeFi, you pool liquidity together to provide a service. In Scale, you pool security together to provide a service. And you actually can yield farm both. So you can stake Scale and yield farm Scale. And what you get in return is developers get access to secure Ethereum elastic sidechains or Ethereum elastic shards. On DeFi, you pool liquidity, and people get access to, liquidity so that you can trade and have exchanges and create financial instruments. So we are going now from testnet. The mainnet's live, but now it's shifting over so that staking will start on October 1st. And then we have collateral, and dApps need the collateral. Otherwise, there's no security. So that's the next phase, and start seeing those dApps come on board. And there's hundreds, by the way, in the pipeline that are excited, that aren't yet in the program, that we're excited to onboard once things are stable and ready to grow.
Well, you mentioned this idea of the Scale token and even yield farming that Scale token. So essentially, that Scale token, how is it minted? And you mentioned that it provides security. How exactly does it provide security?
Okay, so the Scale token, I mentioned earlier that the Ethereum mainnet is like the queen bee of the hive, right? And part of that is Scale tokens are actually being minted out of the Ethereum mainnet. And then when people stake, they stake into the Ethereum mainnet. And what happens is when people pay for Scale chains, they pay and their payment gets staked into the Ethereum mainnet. And then every month, Scale tokens are sent out to all the Scale nodes to reward people for working. And so if you have a Scale token, you can say, hey, I want to stake, I want to join a security pool, and I want to stake on this security pool with Blockdaemon or Figment or Dokia, or stake with us, or there's many validators running nodes on the Scale network, and you can join these pools. And then what happens is then that node could be assigned all over the place to support the network with computing power. And then what happens is every month you get paid a return for staking your token. So it's so security is provided by way of collateral.
So that's a proof of stake security system coming from proof of stake. Now we've been hearing about proof of stake for so long that it'll be coming to Ethereum in the form of ETH 2.0 with sharding and staking. It seems like Scale is kind of already doing that, is bringing those ideas to Ethereum, before the Ethereum mainnet actually does those. Do you think we will see ETH 2.0 anytime soon? And if we do, does it kind of take away a lot of the draw of Scale?
Yeah, well, for the second part, definitely not. So we need it. Scale really, for the vision to come together where we have millions and hundreds of millions of users using Ethereum a day and Scale, we need ETH2, okay? We want it. It's going to dramatically improve scalability. And really, we get 64 versions of Ethereum that are all faster instead of one, okay? And so Scale can connect to all of those, right? Now, the question is, well, why? Why do you still need Scale? And the answer is, it's not just a question of what's the throughput. Like, we can measure throughput of transactions per second and say, is there enough? And so people like to think of blockchains like Visa. Oh, it's just a payment layer. Right. The reality is smart contracts are a compute layer. And so when you need to incorporate logic to transactions, then it's very different than Visa, than all these, these point of sale systems around the world paying the Visa server, right? What it is you have like the world of the Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud, where people are running databases and that behind applications that compute transactions and events. So if I ride in an Uber or Lyft and I, get the ride, then this compute is being captured of like, how long's my ride? And then it pings the money system, right? And the cool thing about blockchains is those things are integrated, the action and the payment. It's programmable money. And so imagine though, if in the centralized world, so Uber, Lyft, Google, Facebook, Twitter, all these different Venmo, all these different applications where there's money being transferred, if they all shared one backend database, they all paid Amazon and they shared the database. And then all of a sudden, like it costs us a lot more to run and our Gmail's slow. I'm trying to send you an email, but it's cost me $1 now because Uber, there's like a big event, everyone's doing rideshare. Like the world doesn't work like that. And the reason why is they have their own unique backend databases. And what Scale does is it gives each application their own backend. And then everything happens in the backend. And then when the money needs to leave, it goes back to to Ethereum. And what happens on Scale kind of gets rectified and then passed over. And then the money goes to the user as if it never left. So the developers like it because they get their own zone, the safe, secure version of Ethereum. And then when they go and interact with Ethereum, they interact for settlement at the end of the day, not all the computing. So what we want is we want to enable smart contracts to run everywhere. And that's where Scale and E2 really come together. And that's why you see still, otherwise, like who's going to, I think it's very clear to everybody, we need second layer 2 execution happening around Ethereum after E2.
Right. And especially when you are dealing with that, you're trying to get, like you mentioned, this is a compute layer, and you're trying to get developers to write smart contracts and run dApps on that layer. Not only does it have to be compatible with Ethereum, but it also on the developer side, it has to be easy to integrate. On the developer end, if I have a dApp on Ethereum, how easy is it to then now go and put it on? And how much code do I have to? Is it going to be a headache to write it for Scale?
Yeah, so that's we put so much effort into in the design and and the community as we're coming together here. It's open source. There's a lot of collaborators on making a really good user experience. And so the 57 dApps in the Scale Innovator Program are testing, sending pull requests, giving us feedback, and we've been doing that from day one. And so now just to deploy, it's 2 lines of code to deploy.
Wow.
Now, then if you want money to transfer back and forth, it's a little more intense, but it may be one developer, a half a day of work.
Yeah.
And which is a huge advantage over a lot of other systems that take a ton of custom configuration. And you look at a lot of other layer 2 solutions, what they actually are no one really talks about this much, but they're software that runs on one server. And people like some of these solutions because they're mathematically provable. Basically, there's no way the money can be stolen because you run, somebody runs software and it just checks everything. And if someone tries to steal it, it basically says, give the money back. But then you have to make sure no one can spend money for a week, and you can't let money transfer hands too much because this verification engine has to watch this. And so what you're doing is you're actually not using a blockchain. And I think what we see now, we see a lot of startups that are trying to build these centralized offerings. But, let's say one of them gets acquired by Amazon, and all of a sudden Amazon's running all of Ethereum's layer 2 scaling because, it's a centralized piece of software. And they sell, they have a revenue model. So they obviously have to grow and are looking, they have investors looking to get acquired. So it's kind of like we're taking an approach of, no, we need decentralization. We want to we want blockchains to work and function and be the operation. Now they're not guaranteed to be secure because it's a blockchain. Bitcoin, all the if 51% of the miners came together, they could steal all the Bitcoin. They don't though, because the Bitcoin wouldn't be worth anything. And so on Scale, it's, a similar mechanism.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you want to provide economic incentives to act good. That's the kind of, that's essentially the whole idea here in blockchain is, play to people's, economic sensibilities. As long as it's economically viable, everyone will act good. Now, we were talking about that Scale token, and you guys just completed a $5 million token sale on Consensus's anti-speculation platform, Activate. Do you want to first go into a little bit about kind of how that platform works, what that means by anti-speculation platform, you know, and why you guys chose to do it there.
Yeah, and by the way, it's an interesting choice of words. I think there's a lot of values you could speak to about this platform. The piece we like the most is it's really I think I almost call it a network health platform.
Okay.
So the Scale network needs a lot of people staking in to provide the security, okay? And it needs a lot of people running nodes. And if it's just 10 VCs and like half of them like, hey, let's sell the money, well, all the security then is gone. You don't have much decentralization. So we want a lot of people holding tokens, but not holding them and trading them, holding them and staking them and using them. And so really we're focused on our number. When we wake up, like the core team and the community, like the one thing we think about is how do we make dApps successful? And so when we think about how do we do a sale, well, hey, we had $57 million of offers trying to buy. We could have just sold and launched on the exchange and have the token being traded. But we're thinking, how do we serve developers the best? And what we thought was, hey, let's use this platform that optimizes for network health, where when you buy the token through the Activate platform, you have to stake it in the network and use it, which actually makes, you know, it serves the purpose of the software. A token is a little piece of software, right, that can perform a job. And we let the token work. Now, it also, a secondary benefit, it is anti-speculation or more compliant because you're actually selling a utility token and enforcing it, not selling a security that then people just buy and trade as like a piece of ownership in something. That's what securities are, right? This is something that is a unit of ownership, but it's a unit of ownership over something that can function like a hammer. It's a token that, and then people prove that. And so that's why we did this. And the compliance story and any speculation is cool, but I get more excited about the fact that 4,000 people from 90 different countries now have Scale tokens, and we'll start staking them on October 1st.
Awesome, and that's what kind of when I say anti-speculation, I'm less focusing on the compliance level, and I mean they're buying this to use it. They're not buying this to speculate. That's and
by the way, I'm just calling this out because a lot of the headlines in the press said anti-speculation. That's more my response to the press.
Okay, well, and then this is the place to do it, and I think that is cool, because at the end of the day, that is what you want, you know, people to use them for, especially when your entire network security is dependent on staking, especially at the beginning. You know, once there's enough nodes, let everyone go wild, but for sure at the beginning. And so in that case, then, you know, why cap it at 5 million? You know, why not the more the merrier, and kind of try to get as many tokens out there as long as they have to use them to stake. Why not make the network as big as possible?
Well, one thing too, we had a limitation on our license in Liechtenstein of we could only sell 5 million. Okay. That was one big reason. Okay. But that was one reason. The other reason was that we, you know, that was also important was we're in a bull market, and you see a lot of projects that are like in the bull market selling as much as they can for the highest price possible. And we're you know, and hey, there'll be many other opportunities for people to get tokens and buy them, and there's a lot of interesting things coming, and then use them and stake them. So this will happen later. You know, there'll be continued iterations where we can ensure we can get tokens out there. All right. But also you know, I think it's the wrong strategy to try to just purely optimize on maximizing price and maximizing absolute distribution. And, you know, to have 4,000 people staking is already a lot. And, you know, we could have dropped the token price to nothing and sold many more, but then that impacts the security, right? So you need the token, each token has to have a certain amount of economic value because it's collateralizing the chain in a proof of stake manner.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there, and I'm just, it's so surprising to me because I spend a lot of my time talking to projects, and right now, you know, the big thing is, like you mentioned, you're selling as much as you can on the bull market, just kind of dumping your tokens, especially now with this DeFi boom. It does seem like we're in kind of the ICO boom. You were giving out utility tokens that most of the time didn't really have a set utility. Now it seems like the big thing ever since SushiSwap kind of forked off from Uniswap is give out governance tokens where it's not so clear the governance is giving you something. And so it's refreshing to see, a company actually doing something that actually helps the network instead of just helps the bottom line. So kudos to you there. But I do want to hear your...
One other thing to add to that too is incentives drive behavior, okay? Right. And one nice thing about the incentives, so on the Scale core team and the early SAF purchasers, the early supporters who purchase tokens or future rights to tokens, is everybody has these long lockups that don't start till October 1st. So I've been doing this for 3 years. My first day of vesting is October 1st. And then I have a 4-year schedule with a 1-year lockup. And same thing with the whole core team. So when it comes down to it, it's like, okay, like I can optimize and get as much money as possible for the company now. And, but that like, what my view is, how can we make the most successful network possible over a 4-year and 10-year horizon? And then when you start thinking with that lens, you make really different decisions. And the thing is, a lot of projects don't have those, they don't have constraints on the founders and the core team. And then people have very short-sighted views. And we saw this in DeFi recently. There's been a lot of this dumping happening and misaligned incentives. And it's different because there's no pre-mine, so to speak, where there's tokens allocated. People are all just kind of staking and earning, but they're beating people. And so they're able to yield a lot of return quickly. And so in a way they do a pre-mine, but it's gamed. But, it's unfortunately putting people, these founders at this disadvantage, because some of them are like, wow, I could look at all the money I can make if I just dump. And then they do it. And then we get in crazy fluctuation. And so I think DeFi needs to learn and grow and figure out a way that if you do have somebody who has a huge amount of tokens, how we, then go post fact to say, hey, we'll keep working with you. We'll keep staking this liquidity pool, but can your founders agree to put their tokens they have into a smart contract with a lock schedule, an investing schedule?
Right. Well, I mean, we saw that happen, just a couple of weeks ago with Chef Nomi of SushiSwap, where it got so much capital, people got so excited. Then, oh wait, he has sole access to the dev fund, sold it all off for 14 million. In the end, capitulated and actually gave it back, which it wasn't a good look at any point of the whole saga. It was not a good look at all. And luckily, he gave over control to SBF. But what is your thoughts on that? Like, listen, you've made a bunch of startups. You've been around the block, both in the traditional world and in the blockchain world. And here clearly you have this vision for a long-term project. You're looking out for the health of the project, but not everyone is. Some people, they want to make money. They want to make a project, make money, and let the community deal with it. I don't want to develop anymore. So not saying that, let's put aside what you're doing, because, I do respect a lot what you're doing, but is it so bad if someone does want to fork another project like with SushiSwap and say, hey, it's an open book, it's blockchain, everyone can read the smart contract. The smart contract says I have control. I want to take the money. I mean, is that so bad? Where do you fall on the point of, in order to be an investor, you have to be an educated investor who does his homework and reads the smart contract? Yeah.
So here's where I think growth should happen. So what happened before, like, hey, like I think it's an exit scam if somebody dumps, 14 million on everybody. And you have total rights to do it. It's open source, it's blockchain. Like we're all only constrained by the rules of the contracts, not social rules. Okay. Yeah. And so that's where communities need to progress. So we'll give everybody a pass before. And the thing is, they pay the price because, like it all kind of comes out in the wash. But where I think growth needs to happen is communities. These networks and the tokens are only as valuable as the communities and the people that believe and that, and the total, that are part of the total value lock and part of the liquidity pooling. And so what the communities need to do, and they need to get together on Discord and say, hey, like, here's the open book. Here's 3 risk points. These 3 contracts have this amount of liquid capital. These are the founding team. for us to keep supporting this project, we want you to put these under, you know, a 2-year lock or a 2-year vesting schedule with monthly vesting or with monthly unlocking or something, right? And if you do that, we won't fork. If you don't do it, all of us are gonna go over here, and you know, that's their right to do that. And so this is so communities need to use the same tools that are the defense for the founders saying, hey, I can do that. I staked, I earned these. They should also like, great, you could do that. You could sell them. They're not gonna be worth anything because we're gonna go over here. Yeah. And so what the approach we're taking at Scale and some other, I think, high quality projects are taking, they're saying, let's get ahead of that and put some really long lock schedules on, because if we create something of value, people are going to say, hey, we have a founderless version of Scale that has no team component. Well, then you have nobody working there and continuing to support the code. And over here, if we were already vested on day one, well, great, that's a perfect fork because we're lacking incentives anyways to keep working hard. And so you can play defense by doing it, or you're going to get offense played on you, I think, in the future. And we'll see kind of some smart community leaders say, hey, like, we're out unless you do this, this, and this.
Yeah, I think that it's really cool. You made a great point of this idea of coded rules versus social rules. And you know, you got to start coding some social rules into the code. And
then you have your answer.
Yeah, and I do think, once again, this is also fresh and new. And every single one of these dramas or scandals, let's say, they are lessons learned. And I do think that the DeFi community and everyone in the blockchain community is looking at these things and they're improving. I mean, just like innovation is happening on the technical side, you know, I do think the communities, you know, they learn their lessons. I don't think anyone's, you know, hopping on the.
We just need some of the kind of like degen leaders to step up and say, hey, like, we're going to ask for this, more of this from, you know, these big bag holders, or somebody who's got X amount, like, you know, the community is going to leave unless you play ball. And you know, the bad thing is there's so much that's happening. Now we're seeing, like, you know, you saw the drama yesterday and the last few days over, like, you know, these new, I think a lot of influencers are also taking advantage of their position. Like, hey, let's get this one to run. Let's get this one to run. And I don't think they're necessarily trying to dump on people, but I think they know the power that they have of, like, memery and you know, hopefully it'll be a small blip on the DeFi history, and because I just care about the space, frankly. I don't, I want to make sure that we make a sustained impact, and we won't if, you know, we need to, if we don't encode the social rules, greed will get the best of the communities.
And we see that with traditional finance, where even there's laws, there's like governmental regulation and laws, but the fact that it's not hard coded in, because they're physically able to make the trade and the code doesn't stop them, people don't listen to those rules. And we saw with that FinCEN dump of documents earlier in the week, like, there's trillions of dollars these banks are money laundering, even though there are rules and it's wrong and they could get in trouble. We're slowly learning, I think, as a people. I do think that as a society, smart contracts will help us, because, like you're saying, that we're going to, once the rules are coded in, there's no getting around them. And I think that has a major potential.
Yeah. And you look at public companies, though, so their officers and their executives have really tight regulations and windows on when they can trade. And most executives, like Jeff Bezos and these other people, if they're going to sell stock, they have to say it in advance, and then they do it over a period of time so that it doesn't impact the stock price. And they do that, otherwise they'll get sued. The shareholders will sue them because they're having an adverse, they have inside knowledge, so they can't use that to trade. And so we have rules. Now, what we need is, we just need smart contracts to support that in every area. And I think that, to your point, I think they will. Like, then we don't just have to trust that person. We can see it. We can see the book, you know?
It's trustless. That's the beauty of this whole blockchain technology. It's trustless. And even Elon Musk got in trouble for tweeting, even, you know, that he was going to sell at 420, when I'm pretty sure he was making a weed joke. But I am not the SEC, so I'm gonna keep hands off there. You know, we're slowly running out of time because you are a busy man. But I wanted to talk about, just bring up one thing that a lot of people that watch the blockchain, you know, industry, we get very excited about the end result, about the technology, about yield farming, about the ability to make money. But, you know, unless there are certain things that only developers really appreciate. And so I want to ask you, you know, Solidity, which is the Ethereum coding language, recently got added to GitHub's auto language detection library. And that's not something that's going to make the headlines, you know, on Cointelegraph, stuff like that. But what effect does that have for developers that are actually building? You know, like you said, you need to build infrastructure. Does this have any effect on, you know, the actual building of blockchains and smart contracts and such?
You know, I think one advantage of those types of tools is just you're able to enforce open source rules better and licensing rules to be and I think it gives people visibility on like how Solidity is being used here and here and here. And but I think stepping back outside of just the pure functionality that we now have is Solidity is just getting, you know, I mean, that's a big step that GitHub is doing this, right? And a lot of people love to hate on Solidity, but I'll tell you, all of the Scale core team engineers and a lot of they love Solidity, and they're like, we're here because of Solidity. We love Solidity, and I think people don't give it enough credit. And Stan, my co-founder, our CTO, he was on the team, the original team, building up the Java virtual machine, and back in the late '90s, and he was. You know, he's doing laser physics PhD research, and then started doing a computer science degree, and then a bunch of these brilliant physics people started building the Java virtual machine, and he was one of them. And so he saw Java, you know, he saw Java grow, and he saw you know, that evolution. And you know what happens is a coding language is like an organism. It doesn't stay the same. It improves, it grows, and Stan's view is that Solidity will do that, and a lot of our issues are going to be worked out, and there's going to be new functionality and new things that come together and are smoothed out. And the thing about it is it's secure. So if you're writing a smart contract, you could use something that no one's written in, or you use Solidity, and guess what? You can have millions and billions of dollars go through it and sleep well at night.
Yeah, and we're seeing the results of that. That you know, it's been so successful that even the network cannot keep up. And you know, luckily we have amazing projects like yours that are helping to try to scale it. So Jack, I appreciate you taking the time to sit with us and really explain to us kind of the amazing work that you guys are doing over at SKALE Labs, as well as giving your insight on you know, some of the big topics that we're facing today in the DeFi space. So I appreciate you taking the time. And for all of our viewers here at REIMAGINE 2020, I'm Yonah Hochhauser. Thanks for watching.